Vice President Pence was here on Capitol Hill Tuesday, but took no questions. His office says he was unaware of this controversial meeting and that he's no longer really focused on the campaign anyway, especially, Elaine, the part that took place before he joined the ticket.
Well, Nancy, some Trump defenders are citing the fact that Donald Trump Jr. was new to politics when he took the meeting, and they say he just didn't know any better. How is that sitting with lawmakers now?
You know, it doesn't amount to much of a defense with them. First of all, because while Don Jr. may have been new to politics, Paul Manafort, who was CC'd on all of those emails and sat in on the meeting, was not new to politics. He has been around politics for decades. So that certainly doesn't let him off the hook. And a number of lawmakers said today that it also doesn't explain why Trump Jr. has had so many different stories now this week about what took place all of those months ago. He has initially said that he never spoke to any Russians about the campaign, and then said that the meeting that took place was about an entirely different topic. And so they say that those shifting stories send a signal, A, that he's got something that he wants to hide, and Democrats argue that this is part of a pattern that is starting to emerge where members of Trump's inner circle either forget about meetings that they had with Russian officials or misrepresent those meetings until they are confronted with the facts.
Well, Nancy, how will these recent developments impact congressional investigations into Russian election meddling?
Well, Mark Warner, who is the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, told me today that this is part of the reason why they've been waiting to interview some key figures. They want to make sure that they have all the documents, like these emails, at their disposal before they interview some of these key witnesses, because they want to make sure that what they say matches up to what's in all the documents that the Intelligence Committee has collected. It certainly opens up yet another front for the intelligence committees. They were unaware of these emails and of this meeting between Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner and this Russian lawyer. So it's now one more encounter that they need to examine as they try to determine whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russians as they tried to meddle with the election. Democrats say this is clear-cut evidence that at the very least, the Trump campaign tried to collude or was interested in colluding, but there seems to be some disagreement up here about what exactly the definition of collusion is. How do you know it when you see it? And so we don't have any sort of clear-cut answer yet from Republicans and Democrats alike about whether this one meeting would constitute collusion.
Yeah, that's a key question right now. What about Republicans, Nancy? Are there any signs among Republican lawmakers that there could be a shifting of support for the Trump administration after all of these developments?
You know, you have a lot of Republicans up here who just don't want to talk about it, who say it's a distraction, that they're working on other issues. You've got a number of Republicans who are willing to say it doesn't look good, this meeting was a bad idea, that the Trump campaign should have reported it to the FBI, especially if Russians had come to them claiming that the Russian government wanted to work on their behalf and against Hillary Clinton. But as far as Republicans being willing to go further than that and really coming out against Donald Trump, the president, more broadly, or perhaps, you know, talking about impeachment or anything like that, no, we're really not hearing much along those lines, Elaine. But you do have a number of Republicans now who, in earlier days of this administration, might have been willing to give President Trump and his inner circle the benefit of the doubt when it came to some of these Russia stories and say, well, let's wait till we get all of the facts, and this story may not show the entire picture. Some of those Republicans are now no longer willing to say that because they have seen too many examples where members of Trump's inner circle have said one thing on Russia only to change their story completely a day or two later.
Switching gears, Nancy, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the Senate will delay its August recess. What were the driving forces behind that decision?
well, you had a lot of Republican senators who were pushing him to do it. They worry that Republicans have now had control of the Senate, the House, and the White House for half a year, and that they were going to be going home for August recess without much to show for it, particularly to their Republican constituents. And they fear that they're not going to have enough time to fulfill some major promises. First and foremost, repealing and replacing Obamacare, although there's no guarantee that tacking on a few extra weeks to the congressional calendar is going to allow Senate Republicans to get past that particular inter-party impasse. We're going to have to wait and see. And then there are another number of other things that they want to be able to do, because they've been spending so much time on health care that they really haven't been able to move off of that issue on the Senate floor to confirming more members of President Trump's administration, more of his nominees, and they want to work on big things like tax reform as well. So, part of this is to give Republicans a little more breathing room to achieve some of these big objectives, and part of it is an acknowledgement that Republicans do have this very rare opportunity where they've got control of both houses of Congress and the White House to do as much as they possibly can to enact their agenda. And that's why you're seeing Congress work a lot more, including a lot more Mondays and Fridays here on Capitol Hill than they have in years past.
But Nancy, when you look at the calendar, realistically, is there enough time for the Senate to accomplish its goals within the time frame that they originally had been looking for?
I think when it comes to health care, the real issue isn't time. It is whether the Republican Party can get past some of its internal disagreements about the best way forward. The reason I say that is because it's not going to take a few tweaks here and there and just massaging the legislation day after day after day to get it to a place where you can get 50 Republicans to vote yes. You have moderate Republicans with major concerns about this legislation, and you've got conservative Republicans with major concerns about the legislation. So it's unclear that Republican leaders can ever come up with something that will satisfy both of those camps. They're going to try. They say that they'll be out with legislation, basically a version 2 of their health care bill by the end of the week, and they're hoping to hold a vote next week just to get everybody on the record about where they stand. But it's unclear right now whether this new version can win over significantly more Republicans than the initial version did. We'll have to wait and see.
All right, Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.